Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSell here, CEO of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And we are joined today by Jason L. Smith, who is the founder and CEO of JL Smith and Prosperity Capital Advisors and best-selling author of The Bucket Plan and his newest book, which I have on the bookshelf behind me, The Rainmaker Multiplier. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey David, how we doing?
I am doing great. We have our nursery getting done this week, at least at the time of the recording, and my wife will be popping out our first baby girl in September. So doing our best to be prepared, but as I've been told, good luck because you're never fully prepared. So
Right?
we'll see how my life changes here shortly.
True story, man. I actually have five and two sets of twins. So imagine this, my wife and I, well, her really, but I was there for the ride, had a set of twins and then, pregnant with the second set of twins. And imagine the whole breastfeeding fiasco with trying to breastfeed four in essence, or going off two and then two others and taking care of infants, and it was pretty
Man,
wild. I actually took 5 months off, which was awesome to be able to help her through that period, or we teamed up through that.
that's awesome. Yeah, my wife has twins in her family, so there is a chance, a higher chance, I should say,
Right.
that we do that when we have round two here shortly after. So,
I'll
um,
never forget the day she ran to the store and all four kids needed a diaper change. And I literally had all four lined up and like a factory changing four
that's
diapers,
funny. That's
man.
funny. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see how we can handle one to start and then go from there. But you've kind of alluded a little bit to your background in that you're a father of five, but walk us through, your professional background. How'd you get into this industry? Kind of walk us through your journey.
Yeah, so funny thing is I always really wanted to be a stockbroker and an attorney. Those were the things I really kind of loved or from early on, right? And wanted to do those things. And my dad had an insurance agency, and I was like, I will never sell insurance, right? I'll never go into insurance. Just insurance agents, with their short sleeve shirts and the tie that didn't go all the way to the belt and the coffee stain. It was like my visual of
Yeah,
no way am I going to be smoking cigarettes, whatever.
it's not too
Back
far off from back in the day.
back in the day, man, it was it was like Mad Men or whatever. But sure enough, I thought I was going to be an NBA basketball player, right? Because I was pretty good, kind of knocking on the door of D1, but really more of a kind of D2 kind of player. And well, I long story short, I blew out my ankle, man, like so bad that had the pins in it and everything else. I was never going to be able to play the same. Lost all my scholarships. I was so mad, at the whole institution of college, right? Like snatching all the scholarships away and all the money. So long story short, I did rehab and came back and tried to walk on to Cleveland State University, blew my ankle out again. And so I was like, all right, I am not enjoying learning about science and all these classes, these mandatory classes I was taking. So I was like, all right, I'm out. And I started selling insurance door to door for my dad's insurance agency, selling home health care policies, literally option A, 1,500 a month, or option B is 3,000 a month, and just create literally I was knocking on total strangers' doors. They didn't even send anything in asking for help. And I'm here to see you on your insurance. They'd be, what insurance? Your medical insurance. And I would look down and lean in and reach for the door, but I was taught don't actually grab the door. They have to open it for you. And then if they let you in, ask to see their medical card, ask to borrow their phone. And back then it was house phones. This is 95. instead of cell phones. Call, get their benefits. Nobody's got home health care, sell them a home health care policy. So that was like the most miserable year of my life, right? But ultimately, like, absolutely taught me a lot of great life lessons, grit and perseverance and, just learning, living check to check or commission to commission. And so, yeah, that was kind of my start. But then it evolved into like learning about life insurance and annuities. And then I became, I was always a love to read and learn. So got certified estate planner, and then of course went on to get my investment license, my Series 65, and bolted on a tax practice. And it just kind of evolved. And then ultimately what I realized what I was really doing within a pretty short period of time, like 5 years into the industry, I right out of high school, so I was like 19 years old. And then I would say in my early, 23, 24, I'm literally the quarterback bringing in, the tax, the financial, the legal, the insurance, kind of coordinating it all. And it really was unheard of, you're talking, you know, 25 years ago when this whole holistic wealth management thing didn't really exist. I mean, it really only existed for the ultra high net worth, the family office kind of approach. But, the middle class millionaires, the small business owners, entrepreneurs, they weren't really getting that level of like service. And so it kind of really just took off, and we've been doing this holistic wealth management gig ever since.
I love it. So, a couple just similarities that I want to comment on. So, when I was in college, I had a blast. It was a lot of fun, but like this will help explain it. If it was raining out, I wouldn't go to class because I didn't want to get wet on the walk there. So I didn't take the schooling itself too seriously. And I remember I totally blanked on in my senior year my geology final. Like I forgot about it, so I missed
Oh,
it. And thankfully, I was at a finance school, and the geology professor's like, "I get geology isn't like important for what you want to do."
right.
So he let me sit for it, and I ended up getting a D on it. And my mom had known that I missed the final, so she was like, "Oh, how'd it go?" I was like, "I got a D," and she's like, "Why do you sound excited?" I go, "Because I can graduate." Because if I got an F, I couldn't graduate. And then the other thing is, I wanted to be a professional baseball player my whole life, and that didn't work out. So then I sold
All
insurance
right.
too. So
No way. A lot in common. That's funny.
so,
Yeah.
um, well, yeah, it is interesting seeing not only how the industry shifted, but also
Yeah.
how you've evolved as well. And in particular, I work with a number of clients who have either merged or started merged with a tax practice or started a tax practice in
Yeah.
tandem with their financial planning practice. And like I have one client who 5 years ago he was at 160 million, merged with the tax practice, and fast forward to today they're up over 800 million.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's pretty impactful when you can marry those two.
Yeah.
But walk me through, and I see the book behind you, the bucket plan. And from my understanding in our intro call, it's sort of your wealth management process that you and the advisors that you lead bring folks through. Unpack that for me, please.
Yeah, absolutely, David. So, the funny thing is like I'd been conceptually doing this, right? Time segmentation of money based on the purpose and the time horizon of when you need to access those funds, right? And so I'd been doing this like all the way back to like going back to my early 20s when I would meet with people. And at that time, I had a family friend that was a stockbroker, and always brought him in to do all the investment stuff. And so all the investments, he was the guy, right? And then we had a CPA we'd bring in to do all the tax modeling and do the tax stuff. And then, I was really the insurance guy. I was certified estate planner, had an attorney that would come in and draw up the legal documents, though. And, I was kind of that quarterback. And what I would do, though, when it came down to like positioning their assets and determining what would be the appropriate investment vehicles, and how much money you have in the bank and how much maybe should go into annuities and how much in investments. I used this approach, and I would have basically laminated sheets that would say on them now, soon, and later. Right. And then what I would do is I was talk to them about, hey, this now money is like kind of money in the bank. And that was like emergency fund, planned expenses, whatever. And they would have accounts. And so what I would do is I would take a pack of sticky notes and I would write every one of their accounts on a sticky note. And then one by one, like kind of consultatively, I would say, like, where do you consider this account? Is this more in the now time frame, more safe and liquid? Is this more of your later time frame, like long-term growth, legacy planning? You're willing to take a risk, you want to pass this on potentially to beneficiaries, or is it kind of in the soon time frame in the middle? Where you might need income or withdrawals, from this money. So we need to be more conservative with how we invest it. That's where I would usually use an annuity. And this was almost like my sales process, right?
Hmm.
For selling annuities and then selling life insurance in the later bucket. And then the investments and the money in the bank would fit in, now bucket money in the bank, investments in the later bucket, maybe some in the soon. And anyway, so I do the sticky note process. And then over time, at one point I decided, hey, I was at capacity. For now on, everybody's coming to the office. I'm not going to people's houses anymore. And when I did that, I got a big dry erase board, but it was called a Pana board, right? And I think these still exist, right? But basically, it's a dry erase board that you can hit print. You can print what you wrote on the dry erase board. This is like before smart boards or anything. This is, 20 plus years ago. And so I was started doing that same thing, right? But then it was boxes of like now, soon, and later. And I remember one day it was Glenn and Judy. I had them in the office and I'm drawing out their accounts. And what I would do at that point is draw each one of their accounts, right? The account balance and the name of the account inside of each of the boxes, the now, soon, and later. Then I'd total up on top of each of the three boxes, the total of each box. And for whatever reason that day, I circled each of the three totals. And then Glenn was like, hey, those look like buckets. And I'm like, and he's like, I've always had a bucket list, but I've never had a bucket plan.
Thanks,
I'm
Glenn.
no way. Yeah. So the funny thing is, at that point, I was calling my financial planning process clarity to prosperity. And I had a nice big document and four-step process and laid it all out and stuff. And so then I'm like, oh, wow, you should call this the bucket plan. And then we started, at that point, I just had my own little practice. We kind of put together a mastermind group of other advisors that I invited to join me. And then I started, an RIA that would serve a bunch of other offices and an insurance marketing organization. And so we named it C2P, Clarity to Prosperity, and then renamed the process the bucket plan. And then we ended up writing the book, and now it's a designation, and it's C credits, and it's in the American College. It's the first module for the RICP course. So it's really, taken off over the last, and the book sells like tens of thousands of copies a year because a lot of financial advisors that don't even know me, but they do bucketing. They buy tons of these books and then they hand them out to prospects to convince them because it's a true story of a client that I took through a financial planning process around the concept of bucketing, right? The bucket plan and in the benefits, that the surviving spouse received when the husband unexpectedly passed away. So it's a parable, it's a true
Hmm.
story, and it's an easy read, like 2, 3 hours. So yeah, I mean that book really kind of put us on the map a little bit, got me a lot of speaking engagements and other accolades and just a lot of opportunities where big financial institutions were hiring me to train all their financial advisors. So went down that rabbit hole for a while. We don't do that anymore. Um, but it was really a great opportunity of, how, doing this holistic wealth management, which is ultimately very sophisticated, but making it very simple, right? Like Leonardo da Vinci says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And so that's what we try to do is we simplify something very sophisticated, right, in holistic wealth management into three simple buckets. And clients love, they love that simplicity.
So, if I'm an advisor listening to this and I have not gotten my RICP or I have not come across your book, what do you tend to see in terms of how advisors are operating relative to a process like this? And what can they expect to get after going through either the module in inside the designation or the book itself? Like, what does their transformation look like, and how does it actually impact their business?
Yep. Great question, David. And really just to clarify too, like we have also on the FINRA website, it's a FINRA, approved designation. And it's called the bucket plan, right?
Hmm.
Um, or bucket I'm sorry, bucket plan certified, BPC is the designation. But also the RICP through the American College had us
Understood.
go and
Okay.
teach the whole module one of I think there's 8 modules of the RICP designation, and it's it's about, the concept of bucketing and the bucket plan process. But what I find, David, is this concept of bucketing has been around a long time, way before I came into this industry. And the earliest sightings were back in like the mid 80s, right? That, it started being, talked about and, this concept of bucketing. So, and ironically, I wasn't even doing bucketing, as I explained. I was doing boxes. It just kind of evolved into buckets. But I find that most financial advisors advise their clients in this way, one way or another. They just don't necessarily have it all kind of like packaged and buttoned up, like what we've done through the bucket plan. So what I've found through the years is, in the last 14 years in training financial advisors and helping financial advisors grow their business, um, is that so many of them were already doing something just like this. They may have even been doing bucketing, but this is just a way that, very like almost like a Starbucks experience, step by step, checklists, processes, systems, workflows, standard operating procedures. It's all documented out to where your team in the backstage can support you in the front stage. And if you're bringing on other advisors and you want to train them, you can kind of outsource that training to us. And as long as you're doing bucketing and you're following the process, which is, a basic financial planning process, that layers in this holistic wealth management advice or approach, right? Of making sure they get their legal and their tax and their insurance and their financial kind of all addressed and all coordinated together. But I find that advisors, that have never heard of this before or that become exposed to it are like, oh, I've been doing that for years, or I've been doing something just like that. And it just streamlines it. It makes their operations more efficient, makes their training of other advisors more efficient. And they also leverage the credibility of the book. I mean, the book's got like U.S. News and World Report, one of the top 10 retirement planning books 2 years ago. It keeps getting like industry awards and stuff, because it just keeps growing in popularity and I'm very blessed in this, right? That advisors that do bucketing or want to do bucketing, like read the book and then they're like, oh man, this is so simple. And then they start buying it to pass out to
Hmm.
prospective clients to describe basically what they do.
Now, what about we had talked about the phrase tax trilogy.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's three pieces of that.
Yeah.
So walk us through the, and is this something that you have at your RIA exclusively, or is this something that other advisors can tap into, or at
Yeah.
least the idea of like walk us through the tax trilogy?
Just like the bucket plan, the tax trilogy, we do open up. We do live and virtual They're in-person train. We do in-person. They're all live, right? But some are
Hmm.
virtual and some are in person. They're 2-day trainings. We do them on the bucket plan, holistic wealth management process for a fee, of course. And we also do it on the tax, we call it the tax management journey, is kind of the process of how you can offer up this tax trilogy of services. The reason we call it the tax trilogy is it's tax planning, tax management, tax preparation. And so, in explaining it to a prospective client, the way that we'll position it is kind of like building a house, right? Like if you're going to build a house, which like when you're doing comprehensive tax planning and management, you got to have a blueprint. You got to build a blueprint to build the house. Very similar in that regard. So, tax planning is kind of like building the blueprint. It's hiring the architect to build the blueprint, and clients pay us a fee, right, to create their plan. And so that's really that tax planning. Tax management is really then building the house, right? Is really that tax management piece, is making that plan come to reality, taking that blueprint and turning it, you made it up in the blueprint, you make it real in the tax management when you actually start implementing the strategies that you designed in the blueprint. So it's like building a house. And then tax preparation is like the buildings inspector coming in and signing off on the good work that was done, right? Kind of like stamp of approval, sending it off to the IRS. And so the tax trilogy is something that we've really like from a financial planning firm. The one thing that I noticed early on, number one, do if you're doing holistic wealth management, investments, insurance, and taxes, table stakes, right? Those are the core. Then you layer in the attorney to do the legal documents. And of course, as part of all that is, healthcare and, building, cash flow and all that good stuff. But financial, tax, and insurance, or I mean, tax, investments, and, in the insurance are the crucial components. And so one of the things that, in doing holistic wealth management, what I recognized early on is there's a kind of a perception that all financial guys, right, and gals get put in this view of like they're just investment people, right? And for us, or if they're doing a lot of insurance and annuities, they're like the insurance guy, right? And so for us, though, what we noticed was very early on, 20 plus years ago, is there was a different level of respect and appreciation for the attorneys and the CPAs that the insurance and the investment guys didn't get. And I'm like, man, I got to fix that. So how are you going to do it? I'm going to I'm going to bolt on a tax practice, and we're now going to be a tax planning and management firm that also does tax preparation, right, for existing clients or prospective clients that we would like to bring in, but they're not ready yet, so they're only coming in on the tax prep side. So we kind of use it in that way. But the tax trilogy is really kind of a way to explain that to a client, but it also is our offering, right? And a lot of firms that work with us that are part of our RIA, they don't insource the tax preparation, they outsource it. In some cases, they outsource it to my firm or other firms that are within the network. But all of us are doing tax planning and management because I really do think, from a marketing standpoint, it's a key differentiator when you really kind of brand yourself and put yourself out there to be able to provide that tax planning and management, right, type of service. It differentiates you from a lot of the other advisors on the block.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine. His name is Dat Lee, and he was at Deloitte for a number of years, like one of their top performers. And he spun out, started his own accounting firm, which you'll actually like this, a little reference to Biggie Smalls. It's called Moda Financial, and his tagline is "No need to worry, my accountant handles that." It's pretty pretty clever.
That's awesome.
But he, in his first 18 months in business, he acquired 400 tax clients.
Okay.
And in the wealth management space for that size shop, that he has, like you're not bringing on 400 wealth management clients.
Right.
So, from a tax preparation perspective in planning that he launched with, you're just getting engaged with a lot more people. And I was like, you gotta spin up an RIA. You gotta spin up an RIA. Like you're sitting on a
Yeah.
gold mine, dude.
Right.
So he brought in an advisor, spun up an RIA, and they identified about 120-ish of the 400 people are actual like candidates for financial
Yep.
planning. Not
That's
all
about right.
400, of course. So now they have an RIA that's bringing on assets left and right because time and time again, the CPA is the trusted advisor, quote unquote.
Yes.
So I guess I just wanted to share that example. But my question is, so when someone goes to like one of these 2-day trainings where you're talking about the importance of the tax planning management and preparation amongst I'm sure a host of other things, what is your recommendation to them? Is it go merge, go start from scratch, outsource, but set expectations and make it, somewhat official? Like if I'm an advisor, I'm managing a few $100 million, I don't have a tax practice.
Yep.
What are you trying to get me to do?
Yeah, so David, it is very like I can, consult with one of my biggest roles, within the company these days is working with the advisor entrepreneurs and helping them grow their business, right? Just like helping them, just overall kind of figure out, what they can do to layer in a lot of the, documented processes and systems and programs and training that we have in more of a sequential order based on where they're at in their business. And it's going to really depend in large part about capacity, what type of team they have, right? What type of like operations leader that they have internally. Because in many cases, it does make sense to just start doing, tax preparation. Like we have client service associates that we trained how to do a lot of the data entry on the tax returns. And then we have, the more experienced people that kind of look it over, make sure everything's good, and then, file it. But for the most part, a lot of it, especially with like pre-retirees and retirees, pretty simple, right? It's a
Hmm.
lot of data entry. It's like basic stuff. People are a little concerned or overwhelmed with it, so they, think it's scary or whatever. But when you really dig in, it's not rocket science. So we've been able to, help a lot of firms just bolt on a tax preparation service, help them identify the right people to bring in, get the right systems in place, the right software, all that stuff, and they can just build it. You might do 100 returns the first year, you might be 250 the next year, you might do 400 the next year, and within a few years, you're doing a substantial amount of returns. Never should the financial advisor do the returns. That's the worst mistake people make is they let that be a distraction and they're not focused on
Hmm.
gathering assets and doing holistic wealth management. They're doing tax preparation. So you don't want to do that. But in a lot of cases, especially if you have a strong operations leader that's part of your team, kind of your leader, your backstage, you can pull off layering in tax preparation services. For others, they might have a really close, trusted relationship with a tax professional, and we can help them kind of deepen that relationship and show them a lot of things they can do to set mutual expectations, market together, and ultimately that tax person, if they're not referring you business back, and if they're not marketing to their book on your behalf to fill up educational workshops and things like that nature, then, thank you very much. Move on to the next
Find
because you
another
will
one.
find the tax professional that's more entrepreneurial, that is looking for a partnership just like you, and that will partner with you. So you can kind of, you can build it, which is what I described first. You can borrow it, which is what I just described, right? Or you could buy it, right? Is
Hmm.
the third option. The third option is you buy it. And in that case, you just got to make sure you have that kind of capacity again. Make sure that that owner is willing to stick around for a few years. Make sure there's a strong G2 internally within that firm. You want to make sure you really look deeply at that book and make sure that the type of clients they have are the type of clients you're looking for in regards to wealth management clients. And culturally, you want to meet with their whole team. I mean, we bought two tax practices, we built our own, and we also have a relationship where we borrowed one, a firm that's about an hour from our office in Cleveland. We do a lot of business out of that little kind of branch and a little bit of revenue sharing, with the owner of that tax practice.
Yeah, I've seen all those scenarios play out. From what I've seen, the most unpredictable one is the borrowing because it depend, especially when you're setting the expectations of co-marketing and developing business together. The reality is most CPAs have never really had to market or develop business because they have something that financial advisors don't, which is a tax planning season that everyone's required to
Right.
do it. So oftentimes, we have to coach advisors on, teaching CPAs like, don't just say they should chat with us. Don't just give our information. Like we need to have a process around that. So I
Yeah.
certainly see that. I do want to take a little bit of a hard pivot. So with the larger firms that I work with,
Yep.
I'm talking, 3, 4, 5+ billion in assets.
Yep.
Oftentimes,
And that's where we're at. And I don't even know if you knew that, David. We're a little over 4 billion. Yeah.
sweet, awesome.
Yeah.
So you, and this is actually going to dovetail well into something. So what I've noticed in working with those folks is oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, they're on their second generation ownership.
Yep.
And I'm not referring to private equity, I'm referring to more of an internal succession.
Right.
And typically that firm was built because the head guy or gal was a rainmaker through and through.
Yep.
And what I've seen is that rainmaker hasn't done a good job documenting the things that they did to grow the company. So then G2 is sitting there and they have good cash flow, but their growth is stagnant.
They're service
They
advisors. And that's,
exactly.
yeah.
So, and you have a book that, admittedly I bought, but I have not read yet.
Yep.
But The Rainmaker Multiplier. How do you think through that? How can people get ahead of that?
Yeah, yeah. So, for me, what happened, David, is early, like in my late 20s, actually I was 29 and I was crushing it like for 29, right? I was making like 600 grand a year. I had a part-time assistant doing my paperwork and, a $500 a month office space that just had a little reception and a little conference room. That was it. That's all I needed to meet people. So it was almost all profit, the whole
Hmm.
600 grand. And at 29, I'm like, oh man, I'm killing it, right? On top of the world, beautiful wife and young daughter, and just everything's perfect. But guess what? Shoemaker's kid, man, had no life insurance. And I'm playing in a basketball league, and all of a sudden I come home and I'm not feeling well. Something's wrong. I get diagnosed with a heart condition that my grandma had, same thing, and find out I have to have like life-threatening open heart surgery. And I'm uninsurable for life insurance. And I'm like, if I die on an operating table, my income dies with me, right? My wife and my daughter are screwed. And so that's where I really set out to, basically multiply myself as the rainmaker of the firm. I was that guy that you were describing, right? But in reality, I didn't really have a firm that was worth anything because if I died, it just it was over. It was just game over. And so at that point, one of the things I started doing is I was in a program called Strategic Coach in it for almost 20 years. And I documented my financial planning process, the bucket plan, and very detailed documented processes, systems, and even went to the extent of hiring, if you ever heard of an instructional design company, where they literally like like interviewed me in every little nuance and step of the way and built online instructional videos and e-learning modules and everything else. They're still in use today and are updated regularly, as part of the bucket plan and kind of training that we provide advisors. But it started with documenting the financial planning process. And then from there, I kind of really did have the epiphany, David, that one day I just kind of like it was a pendulum, shift. Like, man, team members are not an investment. Quality team members I'm sorry, not an expense. They're an investment, right? And once I started viewing that differently, of not viewing, because up to that point, I was trying to pay the least amount of money just to get
Hmm.
paperwork done and get the phone answered type of thing. And then it was like, kind of squeezing profit, right? And then I realized, man, to really grow to, what I really need is it's about who, not how, right? It's about like bringing in talent around me that could do the things that I wasn't as good at, that they had passion for, that I didn't. So it became about this journey of building a team. And right around that same time is where I found that, hey, from a marketing standpoint, when I go out there and market myself, and this still today, our firm predominantly markets our tax planning and management services and unique value proposition that we bring, to get for lead generation, to get them in to do our bucket plan holistic wealth management process and layer in all the tax planning and management that we do. So, that evolution really did, start with the documentation and streamlining the financial planning process. Because, like I was describing before, I was more that guy up on a dry erase board, just kind of like a wink and a smile, making sales, right? And
Hmm.
concepts is all I used. But then I had to start building tools. And so you take the concepts and then you build tools. And the difference between a concept and a tool is like the three buckets is a concept, right? So it's the concept of now, soon, and later, and time segmentation of your money based on the purpose and the time horizon and when you'll need it. The tools are like the fact finder and the volatility tolerance analysis, which is our risk assessment, where we score the soon and later bucket separately, and the cash flow analysis. And like, so we documented these different tools and then put it together with the concepts. And then it was about now it's a process. And now our backstage support team can support our front stage financial advisors. And when clients come through, it's like a Starbucks experience. It's always happening the same every time. Now, every barista, every financial advisor is going to put their own unique spin on things, right? Like a little smiley face on the top of the
Hmm.
coffee, right? But at the end of the day, it is a very succinct, documented process and client experience. And so when I did that, it became a lot easier to bring in young people. And that was kind of the last important component to this is building career pathing and compensation for your people. And so, like, for example, we have a 5 rung advisor career path. And so you can bring people in at any of these 5 rungs. Or you could bring them in at rung one and grow them up in the firm all the way to rung five. Rung one is a client service associate, entry level, 0 to a couple years of experience, mostly tactical work, just learning the business, but playing a big role in supporting other members of the team. Rung two, paraplanner. Now we're teaching them how to become a financial advisor, but they're still in the backstage, getting licenses, getting designations, learning how to build financial plans, but they're in the backstage. There's the paraplanner, rung two. Rung three, now they're an advisor. They're a service advisor, they're associate advisor, they're taking on smaller clients of the firm to free up the rainmakers. They're taking on, new small clients. They're sitting second chair to the lead advisor or the rainmakers of the firm and taking notes and learning while playing a pivotal role. And then, the fourth rung is a lead advisor. And so now you're really the closer. You have a second chair. You're taking on the bigger clients of the firm. And the fifth and the final rung is a practicing partner, which is ultimately you have to have mastered business development to earn your way, to have
Mhm.
the opportunity to buy equity, or even do some equity grants. And we have all kinds of resources and support to help firms do that. But that was like the big, like last, like not, it won't be the final, but evolution that brought it all together is the financial planning process, the tax planning and management, and how that differentiated us from marketing, but also just layered in the true holistic wealth management experience. And then the advisor career pathing. But at the end of the day, it's about people and processes. And if you have no processes and you have the right people, you're still going to crush it, right? But when you layer in the right processes, now you can scale and you can grow so much more efficiently, so much more profitably, and really build value, true enterprise value, in your firm.
Yeah, I love the documentation aspect as well as the folks that you hired to interview you to take what's in your brain out and document it better so that you have that system well thought out for the next generation of advisors and then whoever comes behind you to keep the firm going. I see some, I see firms having SOPs for certain systems and processes of like,
Yeah.
how do I do a beneficiary change and like the little somewhat meaningless stuff that can just be figured out, whereas they don't have SOPs around their sales process, their review process, their investment philosophy, all that. So I
Yeah.
love that. Before we wrap up, one of the questions that I ask all of our guests, which you planted a little seed a moment ago, is a
Right.
book that's had an impact on you. And one of my favorite books, you chose Who, Not How. What's a brief overview as to the impact that that's had on you?
Yeah, well, Dan Sullivan wrote the book, which was my coach at Strategic
Hmm.
Coach for, many, many years. Learned so much from him, a mentor to me. But, he is really the one. I remember sitting in his class and, when he explained it to me of like, your team being an investment, not an expense, and shifting that mindset, having that mindset shift really set me out on a whole nother path. And this book describes that, just so well of like, it's all about the who's and too many people get caught up in the hows. When you really want to find the who's that know how to do the hows. And that's how you're going to grow really fast and how you're going to really grow efficiently. And ultimately how to replace yourself as a rainmaker. I said this earlier. I took 5 months off when if you could imagine this, I didn't say it earlier, but like when I took the 5 months off when my wife had her second set of twins, that's also when I ended up having to have the heart surgery. And so I'm like totally good now. It's like something I was born with. They had to fix it. Now I'm good. Never have to worry about it again. No meds, nothing. But it was a complicated surgery, man. And it was like taking 5 months off. I was like, whoa, this is like time proof of concept. I'm teaching all these people Rainmaker multiplier. This is how you multiply yourself. Build a self-managing company that can run successfully without you. Well, now all of a sudden I'm out for 5 months. No phone calls, no emails, no texts, no business whatsoever. I come back after 5 months. My firm had the biggest and most profitable quarter it ever had without me.
That's
And
sweet.
yeah, I had mixed feelings about that. I'm like, but
Well,
yeah, but that book in what I learned through Strategic Coach was a huge part of, you know, what my journey.
I love it. This has been great, man. And forgive the pun with blowing out your ankle, but through all that stuff that you went through, I'm glad you landed on both feet and then some.
For
uh,
sure.
I can't. I'm practicing my dad jokes for when the baby's here, so forgive it.
It's a
um,
real thing, man. My kids hate dad jokes, but I love them.
oh
Every
man.
once in a while they laugh.
Well, the jokes aren't for them, they're for you. So who cares what they
Exactly.
think? Well, if I'm tuning into this and I want to spend more time with you, I want to scoop up some books, I want to explore what it's like to work with you, where should I go?
Yeah. You can go to our website, prosperitycapitaladvisors.com. Get the bucket plan book. We have podcasts as well. You're going to be on it, right?
Hmm.
We have the bucket plan that's focused on the planning aspect. We have the Rainmaker multiplier focused more on the business building aspect. But at the end of the day, man, just, Google our phone number, give us a call and get on a phone call and see if there's a way we can help you. Whether it's a one-off training, access to e-learning modules, coming to a live training, or whether it's part of a bigger relationship we can develop. We'd love the opportunity to talk to whoever's would like to learn more.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time and the story that you shared around your come up and all the things that you've worked on. Especially the designation is very impressive as well. And in spirit of the book Who Not How, I've had the pleasure of interacting with a number of your team members, and they've been a pleasure to collaborate with and coordinate with. So I'm glad to see that you're practicing what you're preaching inside that book.
Thanks for that, David. This is fun,
Awesome.
man.
All right. Take care.
Yep.